Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar in which we are going to talk about which round would make sense for you, round one versus round two. But before I get started, I would like to know whether you can hear me clearly or not. So those of you who are live, if you can hear me loud and clear, please put a hi hello in the chat box so that I know that I'm audible and then we can get started. At the same time, if you have any confusions regarding round one versus round two, if you have any specific queries, regarding your application process or your GMAT or anything end to end, from prep till application. If you have any specific questions, feel free to post them in the chat box so that I can take a look at it and cover it during the webinar. um, I'll wait for a couple of seconds. Those of you are live, if you can let me know if you can hear me clearly, that would be great. And then we can get started. um, and while I'm waiting, just give me one sec. Let me just get everything sorted out. Yep, I think we're good to go. So let's me first of all tell you what's the agenda today. So I'm going to very quickly introduce myself, and then we are going to jump right into the main discussion where I'm going to help you understand a few parameters that you can take into account to decide, which how should you take a call whether round one makes sense or round two. I'm just using one parameter. There are multiple more, which I'm going to talk about later during the webinar. And I'm also going to give you some perspective about, the um, perspective of Adcoms. What do they think? What, according to them, is more important? It is round one, round two, which is more important. And then I'll give you scenarios where it would make sense for you to apply in round two. And then finally, some common blunders that people usually make when they start their GMAT as well as application process, and how you can, avoid those blunders. So let's get started, guys. I'll start by very quickly introducing myself. My name is Saqib. I'm currently a Kellogg student. I'm in the OneWide program, and I'm also the co-founder of GMAT and GREWhiz, and I had helped build them the whole GMAT intelligence that you see on the platform. If you haven't used it, I would highly encourage that you look at it. Uh, I've taken my GMAT. I have a 760 on the GMAT, and obviously, I and GMATWhiz has helped a lot of students get into top B schools by helping them in the application process. Also, I know a lot of people associate GMATWhiz with just GMAT, but we are into admission consulting too. I'm just going to very quickly share the link of our website with all the information regarding our admission consulting services. If you're interested, if you want to know more how we can help you, please feel free to check out this link. Okay. With this, let's jump right into the main agenda, which is figuring out what would make sense, round one or round two. So, um, the way I would want you to kind of think about this is I usually try to categorize them into flowcharts, right? It helps me make my decisions pretty quickly. Um, so the first thing that you need to kind of figure out is, do you have your target list or target school in mind or not? And how flexible or inflexible are you with these target schools? If you haven't decided these, that should be a first step, because without this, you would not be able to take a call. Obviously, if you haven't taken the GMAT, then obviously this discussion is, mood does make sense. But let's just say there are certain aspirational schools that you would want to go to, right? And you have the list or not. If you don't have it, then obviously go and research and then come back and look at the rest of the part. But let's assume that you have decided that there are 4 to 5 schools that you would love to go to. Okay. Now, then try and figure out whether the schools that you are targeting, do you have sufficient enough score or not. And if you remember, I mentioned the starting of the webinar is that I am just looking at one parameter now. This is not just enough. Apart from GMAT score, you also need to look at the other aspects, which are your profile and everything. But just to simplify at this point of time, let's take the GMAT score only at this, and then think about it with keeping your profile somewhere in the back of your mind. Is this score enough for you to apply in that particular B school or not? So let's say if that school is enough to apply, then obviously apply in round one. Makes sense. There are certain, again, small caveats which I'm going to talk about, but it does make sense to apply as soon as possible. Let me put it this way. Okay. But let's just say if you don't have the required GMAT score, let's say you want to apply to, say, Kellogg, okay, and if you want to apply to Kellogg, you might, and let's assume that you're an Asian or something like that, then you might, with a decent profile, you might need somewhere close to a 740 or more to, have a good chance. And let's say you don't have it. Okay, so if you don't have it, then you need to ask yourself, am I flexible with my schools? Okay, if I'm not getting a Kellogg, I have a 730. Am I okay with some other school, let's say USC Marshall or Tepper or something like that, or McCombs? If you're flexible with it, then obviously apply. But if you're not, and you really say, no, I want to go to an M7 or a T10, something like that, and maybe 730 might not be enough or 720 might not be enough, then round one doesn't make sense. You go retake your test because retaking might take some time, and we are now at the end of August. Most of the deadlines of round one deadlines are in September. A few of them are in the first or second week of October, but most of them are in September. So if you plan to retake, then there's very rare chance that you would be able to apply to a lot of schools. So only if you're flexible, only if you know that, okay, I am okay with some other schools and it's like, okay, M7 schools are just a dream school. I'll apply to just one of them, take my chances, but I'm okay going anywhere. Only in those cases would it make sense for you to apply. So only if your score is enough, or if you're flexible with your score, does it make sense to for you to apply. Okay. Again, there are other factors also which I am going to talk about. Don't worry about it. I know that GMAT is just not the only thing. And I'm going to tell you what are the other factors that you need to take into account to take a call. But I think if you don't have a score, and having a score helps you at least take a call very quickly whether you should or should not. Okay. Uh, Now, the other thing that you need to understand is, let's say you are at the borderline. Let's say you needed a 740 and you are at a 730, or let's say you wanted a 710, 720, and you are at a 690. And you might be wondering, and this is a very common question that almost everybody has. And those of you out here, do let me know if you have asked this question to yourself. What do Adcoms prefer? Is there any benefit of applying in round one versus round two? Would there be more competition in round one, or would there be more competition in round two? So these are the certain kind of questions that almost everybody has. So I thought let me just kind of help you understand this once and for all, so that you don't have to think about this again and again, and then you can take your call decision more objectively. So what you need to understand is that, and this is something which I also say, is that both of these round one and round two are almost equivalent, okay, in my opinion. And what I recommend, and what Adcoms also recommend, is that apply only when you think that your application that you're submitting is in the best shape. Don't rush. Don't rush by thinking, hey, I just want to, the deadline of Harvard or Wharton is on the 6th of September, so let me just very quickly apply. Or the deadlines of most of the T10B schools is around September 15th. So somehow let me just apply to all these schools at the same time. What's going to happen is, and I've seen that with a lot of, candidates, is that they rush. When they rush, the quality of the application is not that great. They don't think very deeply, and the structure of the answers are not that well written, which basically means that you are sending a half-baked application, and the rejection chances of rejection increases instead of you hoping for your chances of increasing. Okay, so what you need to understand is, apply to the round where you feel that you're most prepped for. And I'm just focusing on round one, round two, is because round three is mostly for, if you're in US, or if you belong to that country where you're applying to, then and there are no visa issues as such, then only round three makes sense. Otherwise, it's always round one versus round two. Now, when I say this, I would like to add one very important factor point here. Um, Round one and round two means pretty different things in US and in the EU region. Um, when I talk about round one versus round two, I'm talking about round one basically for me in general means rounds which are in September, applications which you can submit in September, or mid of October. Okay. Round two basically means January. Most of the deadlines would be in the first, second, third week of January. Okay. So this is round one versus round two. Now, a lot of schools, EU schools, would have deadlines around which is somewhere in the middle also. Like I know INSEAD has a deadline, I think, in December. Oxford has a deadline somewhere in another deadline in October or November. So some of these B schools in the European region, in the UK, have certain deadlines, a middle deadline also. Okay, so and I'm not talking about that. If you're applying for those kind of schools, then obviously it is up to you. You can count them in round one also. You can count in round two also. That's totally up to you. But for me, it's September, October round one, January round two. Somewhere in between, it's your call that you can take. Okay. So as per most of the outcomes, there's as far as the scholarship, because I know one of the other factors is scholarship, and obviously your selection chances. These are the two things that you are mostly, you want to figure that out. And there are negligible differences, honestly, as per almost all the T15 Adcoms. As long as their application is good, whether you submit in round one, round two, your chances would almost be equal. Okay, so please don't worry too much about it. If and only if you think you're prepared, your application is ready, your score is solid, you have given your best in terms of stories, the flow and structure is absolutely perfect, then only submit your application. Okay. The only small thing that I would add here is, and again, don't worry too much about it. I'm again adding the difference would still be negligible. But if you're from, India and China, if you can apply in round one, then try to do that. But again, it's preferable, not mandatory, because what you need to understand is, in round two, what's going to happen is the number of people who are applying might be slightly more than the number of people in round one. Slight difference. That's how I would put it. So if you want to increase your chances, a little more round one does make sense. But the first condition when you're deciding round one versus round two is to ask yourself: is my score perfect? Is a safe score? Number two, is my application really well written? Don't send a half-baked application. I'm telling you again and again that I've seen people sending half-baked applications and getting rejected, and with very really good scores. Okay, so don't just think if you have a 760 and you just send any application, they will accept it. Not gonna happen. Okay, so I hope this is clear. I'll just pause for a moment. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Okay, so summary so far is, figure out using the score, whether you're flexible, whether you're not, what score those make sense for you. And the second is, only if your application is ready, then only apply, because as per the outcomes and negligible differences between chances of selection and scholarship chances. Okay, now even after doing these things, these two things, you might still be confused, whether you should go to R2 or not, and why would really R2 make more sense. So I would give you a few reasons. One obviously is how close or far apart you are from your target score. Now, if it's a 10-20 point difference, you can still take your chances if you want to. But if the difference is huge, let's say, for example, you need a 720 and you are at a 680 or a 670, then that's a huge difference, right? You cannot take your chances out there. Or if you're applying to some T10B schools like Stern and all, they give a lot of emphasis on GMAT score, like they look for 760, 750, somewhere on that range, and you're at 720. Then uh, if you really want to go to schools like these, then you would have to ensure that you get your score first, right? So that's like a no-brainer. Don't even think about your profile. Even if your profile is awesome, you need to get this done. The second and the most important thing is, which again brings back to the point about being rushed. Don't rush. Okay. As I said, the deadline for, let's say, for example, you took your GMAT, and I know of quite a few students of mine have just taken GMAT recently, and they got their desired score. But now they want to apply to, say, for example, Howard or Wharton, and I'm telling them, don't do that. You don't have a lot of time. You just have 10 days in hand, and 10 days might not be enough to apply to a B school. Usually, the brainstorming, figuring out the right answers, figuring out the story itself might take about 10 to 12 days to do, or maybe more than that. So if the deadlines are too close, then don't do it. Just as a safe estimation, at least keep 4 weeks in hand if you're planning to apply to 2 to 3 B schools. If you're applying to more than that, then keep slightly more time in hand. Okay. I can see a question here by Shreyas. Are we reconsider in R2 if you're rejected in R1? That's a good question, Shrey. We would not be. Okay. And that's a very, very good point to keep in mind. So don't think, okay, let me just give a rushed application in round one. If I don't get selected, I can reapply in round two. Not going to happen. If you get rejected in round one, then you'll have to wait one full cycle, 1 full year, then to reapply again. So that's another reason not to take any chances, especially if that's a school that you're applying to is a dream school. Okay, I hope that answers your query, Shay. Um, now there is one scenario. Now I'm basically talking about the second case when deadlines are too close. What should you do if you still want to apply? Now, so what I usually recommend most of my clients and all that, what you can do is, first of all, figure out, which we usually do, and this is something that I've discussed in other webinars also, In fact, let me share the playlist of that webinar. If you want, I have done a lot of discussion on this, on how to select these schools and everything. So go to the playlist and look for a playlist which is MBA application strategy and tips. You would be able to find some videos which talks about how to select schools both in US, UK, Europe, everywhere. Okay. So if you still want to apply, and as I said, some of the deadlines are September end and October first and second week. So what you can do is you can first of all decide to first of all classify the schools into three categories. Okay, look at what schools are reach schools, what are target schools, and what are safe schools. What do I mean by that? These schools are basically dream schools. So, for example, at a 720, you might say, I still want to apply to INSEAD and take my chances. I know the score is not that high, but I think my profile may be decent enough for me to get a call. So, you're not too sure about it, but you want to take your chances, and that's something that you would love to go to, come what may. So, those schools like that would come under dream or reach B schools. Target schools are schools which would definitely fall in the category that you think that you have a good chance going into. So let's say, for example, you have a 730, 740, and you want to apply to say Oxford or LBS, and you have a decent profile also. Or let's say, for example, you want to apply to a Tepper or a McCombs, Kelly, Georgia Tech. You want to apply to these schools, and yeah, these definitely could be your target schools because with the 730, 740, you should definitely be able to get an interview call. Again, when I say definitely, I'm assuming that your applications is really, really solid. Okay, safe schools are schools that you are 100% sure, come what may, you would definitely get a call from. Okay, it doesn't matter. You might even end up converting it. So, for example, let's say, for example, you have a 730 40 and you're applying to Warwick or a Manchester, or RSM. And those are schools where you could be, or let's say, for example, ISB, you could be sure that, okay, with the 740 and a very solid profile, I'm like 99% sure that I would definitely convert. Okay. Keep in mind, when I say reach target safe, I'm mostly talking from the perspective of getting an interview call. Interviews are a different ball game. But assuming that if you give your interview really well, then obviously the definition of reach target safe would still remain the same. Okay, so that's how you decide your schools. That's the first step that you can do. And then what you can do is apply in a staggered manner. Now, what do I mean by applying in a staggered manner? So, for example, what you can do is in round one, you can apply to all your dream schools first. Okay. Um, because let's say, for example, you want to apply to Tuck or Duke or Kellogg, which is where you still have 14 days, 18 days to apply to. So what you can do is you can just apply 1 to 2 B schools, which you're really their dream schools and you really would want to go, and you have only time to do just 1 or 2 applications. So you can do some reach. If you want, you can do some 1 or 2 target also. If you have more than 3 weeks in hand, and then leave rest of the school for round two. Now, some of you might ask, why am I saying apply to reach schools and target schools now and safe schools later on? The reason I'm saying this is because, see, let's say, for example, you apply in a target school and you got waitlisted in round one. Okay. And if you apply to a safe school and you convert it, then you would have to pay the deposit. Okay. If you get waitlisted in a target school, let's say, for example, you applied to Tuck and you applied to, say, for example, McCombs, and you converted McCombs and Tuck waitlisted you. Okay. So then what's going to happen is that in round two you would still be considered by Tuck for to convert from the waitlist to you might just get a call from Tuck, right? But my company is already giving you a call. So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna reject it, pay the deposit? If you pay the deposit, you're paying some money, and that money you'll have to forego later on. So and saves to the school that you know that there's a very good chance that you will definitely convert. So whether it's round one or round two, that is why it makes sense to apply safe schools in round two and then apply to target schools and these schools some in round one, some in round two, so that even if you get waitlisted, you would still have some time to wait and see whether you can convert that school or not. If you can, then you won't have to pay the deposit for the schools. Okay, so I hope this part is clear, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But I hope now that it's clear that based on um, deadlines, based on your GMAT score, based on your deadlines, these two are the factors that you should take a call whether you should apply or not. And if you're applying, then you should definitely do it in a staggered manner. Okay. Um, a few more things that I would like to clarify. And once again, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. A few things that you should keep in mind is that now that almost round one is over, But don't make this mistake in round two also. I know a lot of students come to me and say, I really want to apply in round one, come what may. And even now, there are one, two students who are insisting that they'll still give the shot in round one. And even though they don't have the required GMAT score. Now, if you have such a strategy, and some of you might be even starting a GMAT prep now and thinking of applying to round two, don't just force yourself to for a particular round. Okay, remember, only apply when you're prepared. Now, the problem with forcing yourself is that if you force yourself to prepare and if you're not ready, then you would just take your GMAT, not score well, and then not be able to apply it to and waste that particular round. So there are a lot of problems with this. Like the first, like as I told you, that for example, the deadline is in October and you start your preparation in June. And then you say, oh, I'll somehow complete by my GMAT by July end. Then what are you going to do? You're going to cram everything, right? Same could happen now. If you start your preparation now and then you say, oh, I want to apply in the Jan round, come what may, let me start cram. Or let's say, for example, you want to apply the mid round, which I talked about EU, which are in usually October, December, and you might say, oh, it's September, I'll somehow complete it. So what are you going to do is cramp. You'll start learning a lot of stuff, cramming a lot of stuff, and you might not follow a sound approach. You might just keep on practicing, thinking, hey, if I do 100, 200 questions every day, that should be enough, which is not the right strategy. You need to spend time to analyze things, understand where are you making a mistake, give time to it, do a little bit of fine tuning and revision, which is really, really important because you'll be learning so many new stuff. Okay, and if you're learning so many new stuff, if you don't focus on the revision and fine tuning, then you would end up taking the GMAT very quickly. You would burn out, you would not do the GMAT well, and then that round is wasted, and then you'll again do the same thing for the next round. So the best way is to take it slowly and just take the and I'm not saying keep a deadline in mind, definitely keep a deadline in mind, but don't book your GMAT and force yourself to take it. Okay, you might say, okay, let me prepare for a month, let me see where I go, and if everything goes well, then I would decide whether I want to take it in October. Otherwise, I would shift it by one more month. Okay, so that's very important. And if you don't do this, I've known people who I know people have been preparing for a year, 15 months, and at the end of the day, they're so tired that they end up saying, okay, I'm not being able to get a 740 or a 720. I'm getting a 680. Let me just choose whichever schools come in this range, and I'm done. Okay, so you might end up compromising also. So that is why one thing is really important is without worrying about round one, round two a lot, first of all, get that score and then worry about round one, round two. Okay, it's a very, very important thing, especially if you're preparing at this point of time. Otherwise, you'll keep on going through this over and over in different cycles. Okay. I can see a few questions. Let me just take them pretty quickly. Nicole is asking, do you need to take the GMAT first before applying, or can you apply and then submit your scores? Nicole, you need to, unless and until they are giving you GMAT waivers, which some schools do, depending on year to year, you would have to take the GMAT or the GRE, whichever you want to take first, get that score, apply, and then apply. Okay, so score first, then applications. There are exceptions, by the way. Let's say, for example, the application deadline, say for example, is today, let's say for example 30th of August, and your GMAT date is 2nd of September, then you can complete your application and request the adcoms that they give that you would be submitting a GMAT score after 1 or 2 days. They can create certain exceptions, small exceptions like this, but you cannot just say, hey, let me submit my application and I'll give my GMAT score after a month or 2 months or 6 months. That's not going to happen. Okay, I hope that answers your query. Ibrahim is asking, how much of a disadvantage are you at if you apply in a round two with an optimal application versus a round one with a mediocre? There's a lot of difference. Please understand. See, mediocre rush, they get a lot of applications happening. What you need to understand is, most of the applications would be really solid applications. So your application is just not looked at in a standalone manner. It's always comparative. Okay, they'll look at your application, they'll look at the other application, and they'll say, hey, this guy's application is much more strong, looks very, well written, well thought, well researched. So let me call this guy and let me know. Let's check this guy. Doesn't matter at all. Okay, a suboptimal application or mediocre application might only work in your safe schools. May work again. I'm not encouraging you to do that, but for dream and target schools, if you're doing something like this, it's a recipe for disaster. Please don't do it. I'm telling you, I've seen last year, last round, I've seen a few cases. This round, I've seen one case where they wanted to rush. I simply said no. Last round, I've seen people rush, applying to 10, 12 schools, ending up getting just calls from 2 to 3, and they had good scores. So I have live examples of that. Okay, Shrey is asking, can we change our scores after we attempt even after submitting an application? Yeah, Shrey, you can do that. So what you can do is submit your application with the GMAT score or the GRE score that you have, and then write to Adcoms telling them, hey, this is my GMAT score as of now, but I'm kind of retaking it in a week or 2 or 3 weeks. So kindly, wait for some time, and let me don't consider this GMAT score as of now. Look at my other parts of my application, and once I submit my fresh score, you can take a look at it. You can do that. Or you can reattempt, and once you have taken the attempt, you can then send them. As long as you're sending them before the interview calls, it should be fine. Okay. I hope that answers the query, and I hope if you all your doubts are clear. If you, and by the way, guys, if you're liking this webinar, I would request you to please like this video. It helps us reach more people. Okay. Uh, so how do you solve this problem? And again, I would recommend talking to somebody. Now, this is either you can talk to admission consultant, either like for example, you can talk to someone like me, or talk to somebody who has gone through this process. Okay, I'm not just saying that you'll definitely have to talk to an admission consultant. You can talk to us. You can talk to anybody who has gone through the process and try and understand. Uh, when should you take your GMAT? When should you take your what would be the optimal time for application? And I'm saying this because different people have different learning curves. Some people might definitely be able to do the GMAT in 2 months. Some might take 4 months to 6 months. Some might even take a year. So talking to an expert does help because they will help you plan your GMAT and let you know when would be ready. And sometimes creating the strategy for both application and GMAT is a little tough. So it is best that to leave the planning part to the GMAT experts. Like at GMATWhiz, the mentors create the plan for you, right? They tell you what to do, when are you ready, when are you not ready. So they help you out, figure out when should you take your GMAT. Okay, and then they'll also help you out to figure out, uh, you know, what would be the right strategy for your GMAT prep, as well as for your strategy for applications. Like what are the right B schools should you choose? What kind of story should you write? Each and everything from end to end, from selecting B schools to till your interview process, and in the middle, obviously the applications, the LORs, interview prep, everything. They'll help you fine tune all of that. So it makes sense that you do all of this. And not just take a call randomly, deciding, okay, let me just apply in round two. That's not a good way to do it. And I know sometimes it is difficult to believe this, so that's why I thought let me just show you a few success stories that might help. But before doing that, I just want to share a Calendly link with you, just in case you're planning to take your GMAT, right? Whatever I've told you so far, if that makes sense to you, if you resonate to it, and if you want to know more, how we can help you prepare for your GMAT, or how we can help you with your application process, book a call with us, and we'll definitely help you figure out the best way possible. And I just want to show you some of these success stories. Uh, and look at three different success stories of three different scores. Manish had a 720, but had a very good profile. So once we had his score of 720, we kind of took a call. Okay, let's keep INSEAD and Kellogg as our reach school. Let's call target Cornell as our target school, or something that we'll be able to achieve, and let's try and apply in all of them. And he ended up converting all three. So he converted his dream school, he converted his reach school. Jeevan had a 760, and I just told you, right? NYU student looks for a higher score. So once he had a 760, I told him, okay, now definitely you can apply to NYU student, and he wanted to go into finance. So profile was helping him GMAT score as well as the school that he was looking for. And in case of Rishabh, so you can see two different cases, right? One with a 720 converting NCERT Kellogg, another with a 740 converting NCERT in Kellogg. So different people could have different scores and still converted. It depends on how strong your profile is. That's another thing that you need to keep in mind. And when are you applying? How much time do you have in hand? By the way, Manish applied in round two. So this is one example which I want to emphasize on, is that if you have a solid application, then only apply. He did not apply in round one. In round two, once he had his score for 720, which he felt was decent enough, then only worked on his application, made sure that it is a well, structured application, and then only applied. That helped him convert. And there are other cases also with low scores also. Like for example, I want to take two cases of Barkavi and Alfie. They had GMAT 700, and Barkavi had a very, very good, very, very strong profile. So she applied to NUS and NCERT, ended up converting both of them. So for NUS was our re-school, NCERT was a dream school, and she ended up even getting a scholarship. So why I'm telling you, and in case of Alfie, she ended up getting 80,000 scholarship for 700. She's in the energy sector, wanted to be in it, so we chose a school which would be apt for her. Now, I'm showing you these cases because I want to make you understand that GMAT score is a one element. Once you have the GMAT score, the target score, ask yourself what kind of schools can you apply to. Are those schools reachable in that or not? And if the scholarship also is an important thing, then look at if you can get a scholarship also or not. Now, a lot of consultant might have said, hey, with a 700 bar cover, you will not convert in CET because their average is 720 or something like that. But that is where admission consultants come into picture, and we come into picture and tell you whether by looking at your profile whether it would make sense or not. There are cases where people have applied in round two and round three, ISB round three with a 680, a low score, but very awesome profile. We could have simply said, hey, with a 680, you will not convert ISB. Chinmay ended up getting a scholarship with a 690. So that is why the algorithm that I gave you, remember, what are their target schools? What is your GMAT score? Is it enough or not? And in that cases, take inputs from the consultant so that they will tell you very clearly whether you would be able to still convert or not. Okay, and you have numerous success stories like this. I would not go too deep into it, but I hope you get the idea. Uh, to summarize very quickly, um, have the GMAT score or GRE score, understand the target school that you're looking for, and ask somebody, do your own research, talk to a consultant to figure out whether that score makes sense or not, whether it's enough or not for an to get a convert, and if you want scholarship, and then have sufficient time in hand to apply. If there's not a lot of time, stagger your application. Do some in round one, do some in round two, and ideally do keep your safe schools for round two because you'll definitely convert them. Okay. So that's it from my end, guys. I hope this session was helpful, informative. Our contact number, email ID is on the screen. I've already shared the Calendly link. If you want to know, as I said, more about GMAT, about admission consulting, if you want to work with me on your application process, feel free to just book a call with us, and then we can talk about it and see how we can help you get into your dream B school. Okay. Um, so I'm ending the session now. If you have more questions, just shoot us a mail and we will be more than happy to help you out. And just one last point, please do this video. If you found this helpful, it would help reach out to people who are looking for similar content. Okay. Have a great day, guys. Bye.